How far are you willing to go to heal the trauma in your life? What are you willing to do to ensure that whatever generational issues or problems were along your bloodline end with you? If it meant that you had to dig deep within yourself to find yourself and to learn more about yourself that has led you to making decisions that are not in your best interest, would you be willing to do them? These are some of the questions that I had to ask myself because I found myself in a space and period and time. I no longer wanted to be a victim of my circumstances. I no longer wanted to play small. And I wanted to be able to say that when I released myself from this season, that not only was I healed from childhood trauma, generational trauma, any type of trauma that existed, but that I would be able to hold my head high, knowing that I did the inner work. That led me to doing a past life regression session. I want to tell you all about it and tell you exactly how I was able to find myself and everything that I needed moving forward. And welcome to After the First Sip, where a lady never drinks, she sips. My name is Shauna, and I'm so excited that you have joined us. I'm really just going to get started in this because we're going to go deep, we're going to go heavy, and there might be some things that are being introduced to you probably for the first time, but that's okay. We're going to take our time and work ourselves through it. Now, if you haven't had a chance to watch some of my previous episodes, I encourage you to do so because it gives you a kind of an overall view of where I am in my life and how I am moving forward, even regarding God, religion, spirituality, moving forward in a space in which I can now claim sovereignty in my own life. I've had a couple podcasts so far, one including Heathen and Heretic. Please check them out. Because I no longer subscribe to Christianity, I deconverted, I still believe that there is spiritual insights that we can all have regarding ourselves and especially regarding our own healing process. At the end of 2025, I was so broken by relationships, by friendships, by ventures that I had tried that didn't work, by just overall feeling that I was not winning or succeeding in life in the way that I wanted to, that I was willing to go all the way to San Antonio, Texas to get away, have it 2 years of seclusion, and be able to heal the parts of myself that I felt like were preventing me from having the best life that I ever could have dreamed of. I realized in that process, one, I didn't move, but two, I really didn't need to go 12 hours away from my location to work on my healing. I did need to be honest about where I was in terms of my boundaries, and I need to create stronger boundaries, especially for the individuals that had been kind of running amok in my life. During this time, I realized that there was still a lot of childhood trauma that I had been experiencing, a lot of times in which I took what had happened to me in my youth and I just tucked it away because I didn't have time to process through it. I didn't have time to ask the questions of why I do what it is that I do because life's moving, life's going. I'm involved with other people. I'm involved in ministry. I'm involved in activities. I'm involved with work. When do I have the time to stop and say, hey, why am I even doing all of this? But it did come to a point when I said, in order for me to move forward, I have to go back and I have to sit in the uncomfortableness of certain situations or events that happened in my life that really shaped and conditioned me to react in certain ways to individuals. I am a huge overgiver. People pleaser, overgiver, would give of myself to the point of exhaustion. I would be pouring from a cup that was broken. And I wondered to myself, well, why am I so quick to do that? And because I started to really hone in on myself and hone in on what I wanted from my life, I decided I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to my healing. And even if that included going back into the recesses of my mind to figure out why I do what I do, that's exactly what's going to happen. I was introduced to Brian Weiss and the past life regression session on YouTube. This is the one particularly that I did. There are a couple on there, but this one particularly is the one that I did. I did so because I've had this idea, I've had this belief that we've been here before. Now, this life is the only life that I have right now, and I'm living it right now, but we've been here before. And how all that comes together, I don't know. But in this particular regression session, I wanted to really see what information I could gather from my quote past life. And honestly, it's not what I expected at all. It's not what I expected. I ended up finding out things about myself that I just, honestly, there were memories that came out that I didn't expect. There were things that were brought up that I didn't even know were buried in me, but it allowed me to heal in a way that I just would not have done if I had not done the session. So let's get started about what the questions were in the session that led me to deeper thinking and deeper revelation of the past traumas that I had had in my life. So if you're thinking you're going to be in a session and you're going to be thinking about your time when you were a African princess, or you were a monarch, or you were a servant in some faraway land. I don't know what I thought, but that's not what ended up happening. My session was actually a very enlightening time of understanding the trauma that I had inherited from my mother, the ways in which we were connected in our grief and our pain, and how I was finally able to identify where my hurts were in regards to my mother and how to move forward. So a quick background. My mother was my everything. I loved her down bad, but she was in a very rough marriage. And at the age of 19, my mother took her life. It was the most devastating thing that has and will probably ever happen in my life. And it changed, I feel like, the trajectory of my life, and even changed how I approached individuals. I became a savior in a way. I gained a very big savior complex where I wanted to save everyone. I couldn't save my mother, but maybe I could save you, and maybe I could save him, and maybe I could save her. And I just was out here saving everybody, giving, till I had nothing left. And so when I started this session, I didn't think that that would be a part of what I would reveal or be reconciled through this session, but I am glad that I did it. And here's how it started. He has you get into a space and where you're counting down, you're experiencing light, and he starts asking you questions. And so I'm going to give you the questions that he asked, my response to those questions, what happened while I was engaging in this meditation, and then what I learned from those questions and from those experiences. So the first meditation that he has us doing is we are going into a childhood memory. He asks you to go into the first childhood memory that comes to recollection. What do you remember? And for me, my first childhood memory was me laying on my mother's chest and hearing her heartbeat. And I was probably 8 years old at the time. I had just gotten my hair freshly done with my braids with the beads at the bottom. You remember them? And I was laying on her chest. I know my head was hurting because fresh braids hurt. And I can remember hearing her heartbeat and feeling her. It's like in that moment, I actually felt. It was like in that moment, I actually felt her. I felt her presence. And I remember thinking to myself, I chose you. This is why I chose you. And I felt this immense love and care, and knowing that They say, do you choose your parents? Do you choose this life? I don't know about all that, but what I do know is that I remember laying on her chest and being like, I chose you. I chose you and I love you dearly. So that was the first memory that we visited. So the second memory that he asked us to go into was being in utero, in my mother's womb. To be in that space, to bring myself to that space. Of course, I didn't think I'd remember, but it seemed as if it was just so natural to remember being in her womb. And in that moment, I remember her touching her stomach and crying and just crying and saying, I needed you. I needed you. And the exchange that we were having, me and utero, her holding her stomach and crying, it was this immense amount of love. And it was like, oh, this is why. Like, she needed me just as much as I needed her. During the time, my mother was a young woman. She was 21 years old. She had previous terminations of life before with other children. And so in this instance, she had decided to keep me. I'm glad that she did, but I knew that she had made a lot of sacrifices to keep me. She was a young woman, a young model. She was really at the peak of just being out there and doing her thing. And motherhood is a sacrifice, and she sacrificed for me. But I just, again, remember her holding her stomach and being like, I love you and I needed you. And that connection was a very powerful one that I felt. Definitely had me in tears, and I had to stop the session a little bit because the session is like 30 minutes, and he kind of, I don't want to say rushes through some aspects of it, but in that moment I had to pause and really reflect. I chose her and she chose me, and we had this immense love for each other that I know existed, and in the memory and in a spiritual way. This next set of memory regression was a little bit different than before. Before, he had us be like in a bright light, and then we're awakened to this memory or this place. This time, he had us go through a door. He said, there's a door that you are opening and you're walking through. And what is that memory that you have when you walk through? What is this scene in your past life? And so in this particular situation, I had been having some rumblings about myself and another individual, whether we had known each other in a past life. So that was actually on my mind. And I walked through this door. I didn't expect them to be there, but they were. And they were laid out, and we were before this fire. This individual is laid out. I am walking back and forth between them, and they're watching me, and it's as if we are in knowledge of each other. Like, yeah, we know each other. We've known each other before. This is where we started. We started in the fire with just us. It was a very intimate moment. It wasn't spicy. It wasn't immensely sexual. It was a knowledge and recognition that I know you and you know me. And even in this lifetime, if we do not connect with each other, we will in the next, because we have many times before. As we're moving on through the memory, he's like, is there anything else, Brian is asking, is there anything else that you're seeing or that you're experiencing? And for me, I was with this individual. We come before this forest, and these trees don't look like trees, they look like pillars. But there's no clear path. There's no path that has been cleared. It's just this big old forest that you can see, like there's a fence and there's an opening. We're standing before the opening. The trees are like lined up, but not like trees. Like they look like pillars. And there's no direct path. But we're standing next to each other. And I recognize that in that moment, we are actually transversing together. It's as if we are beginning a journey together. The forest didn't look ominous. It didn't look as if it was going to swallow us whole. It didn't look like there was anything scary in there. it just looked like a forest. And this was our adventure that we were going to go on together. So that was an interesting aspect I didn't actually think would come up, but it did. And it just confirmed for me that sometimes you meet individuals in this life, and for whatever reason, they're not prepared for you and you're not prepared for them. But you have known each other before. And so if in this lifetime you guys don't work out, in the next, there's a possibility for y'all to be there. So that was one I was like, okay, girl, like, this is a lot going on. I just had that time with my mama, and now I was just crying with that. Now I'm with this past life individual, and I'm like, why are we here? And it's not working out with us now, but it was a lot of things going through my head. The last memory that he asked us to go into was us to imagine that we were being contacted by a spiritual being. And this spiritual being, we don't know who it is. We don't have like that connectivity other than, the spiritual being, ancestor, angel, spirit guide. They're there to communicate with you a truth or something that you need to know. And what would they say, or what would they communicate to you? This was probably the most clearest of the memories that I had. I mean, all of them were very clear. I can recount them, and that's how they happened. But this one was probably the most impactful one, because it left with me a light and understanding that I did not have before. When I saw this being, it was a being that was in white, and I immediately knew that was my mother. I can't tell you how I knew, I just knew. The being was, her facial expressions weren't there, her color wasn't there, it was just a white being that looked like a person. But the being was hunched over and in sorrow. And I'm not talking about a sorrow that someone is in torment, but a sorrow more so of, I wish this is something that I could have conquered in my life, but I didn't. And the being was bent over and was somewhat crying and saying, I'm sorry I tried. I'm sorry I tried. And that's what they just kept saying over and over again. And I walked up to the being and I held her, I believe it was my mother. I held her and I said, listen, I love you. I will always love you from here until we meet again, and have as many as ever lifetimes as we need to meet. I will always love you. I know it was hard. I know it was rough, but you know what? You did the best that you could, and I'm good. I'm good. My life is good, and that's because of you too. And I will always, always love you. Just listen, there are a lot of individuals who have terrible relationships with their parents. They have terrible memories of their mothers doing things to them to try and hurt them and not be in their lives. I do not have that experience. My mother was amazing. And honestly, if I could give up the things in this life to be with her again, I would. If you're like, hey, you got to give all this up for her to come back and be reincarnated, and I would in a heartbeat. I love my mother. But in that moment, I knew that there was a generational trauma aspect going on. In her life, she had experienced a lot of hurt and chaos and pain, and probably her mother before her and her mother before her. And in this moment, she felt like, dang, out of all the things, I loved you so much, but I tried and it just didn't work. And in that moment, I embraced her. And told her all those things. And after I got finished saying them, I felt the being literally like melt into me. It's like the white light didn't dissipate. It didn't go anywhere outside of me. It literally started to bend itself and bring itself into me. And I found myself being filled with that light. And in that moment, I can remember myself feeling, you may have tried, but we will succeed. It will end with us. We will be successful. No matter what happens in my life, it ends here. The hurt, the pain, the trauma, the sorrow, the depression, the anxiety, the over explaining, the overthinking, the overgiving, the people pleasing, the not putting ourselves first, the creating toxic situations because we're afraid of peace, that ends now. We will. And I say we because I feel like that energy came into me. My mother's energy came into me and saying that, hey, we will succeed. We will heal. We will do everything that we need to do. This will not end us. This will not end us. And for your effort, that's okay. Because I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I don't carry anything on to the next. Now, I don't have no kids. I'm not planning on having no children. But I do think that it's important that the things that were in my family line that were not able to be conquered and that people tried to heal but couldn't, that I do work on that. It was a lot of tears, a lot of reflection afterwards, a lot of conversations that I had to have with myself. And so I just want to give you a little more insight into what I believe the past life regression session did for me and my healing journey. Many times in my life, I took on so many other people's burdens. I took on responsibilities that were not mine. And a simple, easy journey for me, right? Because I have to take this journey regardless. But a journey that would have been easier for me was complicated tenfold because I was taking on everybody else and taking on other aspects of traumas, including, like I said, generational, historical, cultural, religious, church, all of that I was taking upon myself, trying to get up my mountain of life. And carrying those burdens was wearing my ass out, and it wasn't allowing me to heal in the way that I needed to. And so once it was like, no, you need to heal. You need to do what it is that you have to do to make sure that you do not end back up overextending yourself, people pleasing for individuals, not having what you have, being broke, being desolate, not being able to do what it is for you, being sick in your body. You have got to make sure that you do not get to that place anymore. And that means letting go of the burdens of others. For my mother and what happened in that memory regression, I feel like that was a confirmation of our love towards each other, our confirmation that we did choose each other, and our confirmation that we were meant for each other. It was also a confirmation to me that she had a lot of burdens that she dealt with and that she died, unfortunately, of a broken heart. But that I had the opportunity to be able to heal the portions that maybe she wasn't able to. And that I myself can live this life not only happy, not only free, not bound by the issues and concerns that others try to put on me, and that I do have power and I have choice. Really, when I started the past life regression session, I certainly thought that I was just going to end up free falling and being some type of trip somewhere else at a different time. But it really led me to healing and working towards the healing of myself. It delivered me from the bondage and burden that maybe I was carrying that I didn't know that I was. So thank you guys so much for listening to me, coming here with me, having this time together. Please like, share, subscribe. Wherever you see this thing, like, share, subscribe. Help a sister out. Remember, after the first sip, a lady never drinks. She sips. Love you guys. Bye.